Welcome to another episode of the Sensible Hippie Podcast, and I'm your host, the Sensible Hippie. Today, our special guest is Reverend Bill Bean, a renowned figure in the realm of spiritual warfare and deliverance. Reverend Bean's journey is one marked by encounters with the supernatural and standing at the front line in the battle between good and evil. His work as a spiritual deliverance minister has taken him across the globe, confronting entities and forces that most of us have only heard about in stories. In today's episode, Reverend Bean will share insights from his unique experiences as a minister, an exorcist, and a demonologist, shedding light on the world that often remains hidden and misunderstood. So sit back, open your mind, and be prepared for a conversation that's as enlightening as it is spine-chilling. Let's welcome Reverend Bill Bean to the Sensible Hippie Podcast.
And this new year has started busier than ever. I'm always busy, but for some reason in this new year of 2024, I'm just absolutely inundated with people coming out of the woodwork that are having these types of spiritual problems.
Why is that, you think?
I think it's indicative of the times that we're in. And I think that all life operates on frequency and vibration. And so if our frequency and vibration is on high, life is good, life is positive, we're moving forward. But if our frequency and vibration is lowered, that makes us wide open and vulnerable and susceptible for demonic attacks. So the reason I believe that all life operates on frequency and vibration is because if God, Yahweh, spoke the world into existence, then he did so by the frequency and vibration of his voice. Therefore, all life operates on that principle. Yeah. So as part of my work, Mia, I urge people, try and keep your frequency and vibration on high, because when you're lowered, and there's a variety of ways that it can be lowered. You know, the number one way is trauma. And other ways are through the use of and abuse of drugs and alcohol. These are spirits that have a legal right to come onto the person and create a variety of damage, and they will. And so the agenda right out of the devil's playbook is to kill, rob, and destroy. And I've seen it so many times. I was so thankful to God that A, he saved me, B, he transformed my life, and C, put this calling on me. I didn't choose to do this work. He chose me to do it. And it's the greatest thing when I know that God's actually worked through me to save someone, and to see them have that evil, negative garbage removed from them, and to see them to move forward and have a quality of life.
Yeah, I read your book, and you had a really hard upbringing. And
it was hellish.
Were already, yeah, to put it nicely, right?
Yeah.
Because you were already experiencing entities and demons when you were little. Your whole family in the house that you lived at was like a haunted house.
I suffered regular demonic attacks between ages 5 and 12. My mother suffered far worse than I ever did. She suffered more than any other person I've seen, any person. And that goes that I've seen a lot of suffering throughout my lifetime and in my career as well. But I have yet to see anybody that has had the suffering on the level of her, I'm sorry to say. And for many years, if I had a dream about my mother, it would be a very traumatic dream. And I would wake up breathing heavy in a sweat. It was very, very traumatic. And now I'm happy to tell you, and I praise God for this, that I often have dreams, whether it be my mother or father or other loved ones. Most of my family is gone. And so family members come to see me in dreams now, and it's always wonderful and peaceful and loving and pleasant. I praise God for that. But Mia, for many years, it was very traumatic. It was just awful, and it would put me right back into reliving, some of those things that took place. So my life started out in the fear-based, trauma-based way of thinking and living, And boy, when we're in that is absolute low frequency and low vibration, and it is like a magnet for these dark forces, and they will amplify and magnify to the point to where the person feels like they have the black cloud over their head, and everything is a disaster. And everything, it was so bad for us that we ended up just really taking it in stride. We were conditioned to accept it as a part of our reality. And so we expected these bad things to happen, and that's a terrible way to live, and it's really not living at all. You're just surviving. But I want to thank you for taking the time to read the book. I truly appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a great book.
Thank you.
Very good. Yeah, amazing. Do you think, or I think I kind of read that maybe you even had a family curse because your grandfather got hit by a boat?
Yeah, I think it all started out, I've written 11 books. The first book was called Dark Force. And in that book, I said that it all began in 1970 when my family and I moved into this 3-bedroom ranch-style home located in Glen Burnie, Maryland, in a little community called Herondale. But it actually goes much further back. I found out additional information after had written the book. A reliable source, a family member, and the little bit of family that I do have left, they don't like to talk about these things. But yet one of the family members did say to me that this goes back over 100 years ago when 2 family members actually conjured up demonic forces through ritual invocation. And if people are doing that, believe me, they're going to come. If you're summoning these types of dark forces, they are going to come, and they're going to create a variety of damage, and I believe that's what happened. So I feel strongly that my parents were led to that house where evil was already manifest and present in the entire area. So the dark forces that were attached to my family actually led my parents to that house, and it was like a perfect storm. So now we were encompassed by this evil that originally was on the family due to that ritual invocation, and now being led to a place where evil was already present and manifest in the home and in the area as well. So it was the perfect storm, and that's why I believe it was so severe for my family and I.
Yeah, both of your parents didn't live to be 50, right?
That's right. And boy, they both died sad and tragic deaths. My parents were good people. My dad was a good man who made terrible choices. And they were married in 1956. My sister was born in 1957. Another child was born in 1963 that died under mysterious circumstances. And all that I know about that, because I've gotten conflicting accounts, what I do know for sure is that the child didn't live for very long. It was a male child. And when the child died, representatives from Johns Hopkins came and retrieved the body for studies. That's what I know for sure. And I contacted Johns Hopkins, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, and they told me that they don't keep records like that. They didn't have any record of it, which is very suspicious to me, that if you're retrieving a body for studies, that must have meant something to you, and something significant, and yet, nothing. We don't have anything like that. They just pretty much dismissed me pretty quickly. So that's what I do know. So that child was born in 63. I was born in 66, and then my younger brother was born in 69. There are photos, and I was not aware of these photos until probably the year, maybe 2005 or earlier. My sister had given me she asked if I wanted some of my mother's family photos. My sister had all that. And I said, sure, I'd like to have some. And I started going through some of these photographs, and I was astounded to find that my mother had kept some very disturbing images. One image was taken in 1968. I was 2 years old, My sister was, she 9 or 11? I think she was 11. In the photograph, and I'm not sure if my mother or father took the picture, but in the photograph, we're seated behind a toy piano, Christmas time, 1968. My sister's to my left, and her far left appeared to be this very tall, black hooded figure. It looked to be at least 7 feet tall. That's 1968. That's before we moved into that house. Then the following year, in 1969, there was another photograph taken. And again, I assume that it was my dad that took the Polaroid photo. I was 3 years old. I'm standing in front of these bushes where we lived at prior to moving into that house. And it was as if, Mia, a dimensional doorway had opened up, and suddenly all these different types of beings were in the photo with me. And beings that, one looked like a very tall being that had apparently looked to have the face of a lion. That was standing behind me above my head. There were 3 humanoid-looking figures standing behind me in single file, different sizes. There appeared to be a little gray alien-looking being to my left, and to the left of that appeared to be what looked like a Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Sabe type of being. And then there were all these other faces throughout the brush and the bushes there. So at that very moment, it just seemed like this dimensional doorway opened, and then all these types of beings manifested in that photograph with me at age 3. So that was 2 disturbing photos. And then I saw some other photographs. In 1974, there was a family photo taken. One of the, maybe the only that I've ever seen, where the family appeared to be smiling. That just didn't happen in that house. And so my dad was in that photograph, and so it was my parents, my brother and I think my sister and grandmother. And in the background, there was artwork on the wall behind my dad's shoulder, behind his left shoulder, in the artwork, which was a depiction of a peacock. In the center of the body of that peacock appeared to be an alien-looking face. Very clear. And then behind my dad, in the dining room at the back door, appeared to be a very large face. So that's 1974. And then 1975, there was a photograph taken of my mother in the house. And I have to tell you, the house was very ominous and foreboding from the very beginning. My sister and I were frightened at the first glance of this house. It was semi-dilapidated. My dad was a master carpenter. He saw it as a restoration project, which he did quite a bit of work to, in fixing it up and making it to look nice. But you'd walk through the front door, and you would walk into the living room, and it was this dark brown paneling on the wall. It was almost black in color. And so the house was equally ominous and foreboding on the inside as well. You could feel, just absolutely feel that evil in there. So in 1975, so again, as you're walking into the living room, to the right, when they first got the house, it was a long closet, storage closet, and there was an attic above it. And my dad had knocked that wall out and made it a bar. And so in 1975, my mother is standing behind that bar on the telephone, and there is a very large and long rectangular mirror behind her, and to her left is an oval-shaped mirror. And in the mirror, it looks to be in the oval-shaped mirror, somehow reflected off of the larger mirror, is just as you and I see each other right now, this alien-looking face with big black eyes, and I mean, just as we're looking at each other now, it is that prominent in the photo. And then another being, which appears to be 3 feet tall, which is standing beside my mother, and you can see the flash of the camera coming off of its head. So that's 1975. So not only did we have, these demonic problems, we also had the otherworldly being type of phenomena as well. I've experienced every type of phenomena that you can think of. And it's astounding. It is unfathomable. But at the same time, I'm thankful to God for having me to have had those experiences, even the bad ones, because I couldn't be where I'm at right now and helping others had I not been there to suffer. So I feel that it was all part of my journey to go through these types of things. Now, do I wish that I could change some things? You better believe it, especially when it comes to the suffering of my mother. So we get in there. My mom is the first to have an experience in the house. It took place after she was while she was unpacking. My dad had taken us with him for the day to his parents' house. She felt the presence come into the room. She really thought that it was my dad sneaking in to play a joke on her, and she spun around fully anticipating on seeing him. And to her shock, nothing was there. So she was unnerved by it, eventually able to collect herself and go back to doing what she was doing, and then one of the bedroom doors slammed shut, my sister's bedroom door. And that was enough to make her go outside and wait until we returned. So that's where it started as far as the house. And then it gradually escalated into violent physical attacks on us by those demonic entities that greatly contributed to the destruction of my family. And even sadder, Mia, is that, again, my dad, William Bean Sr., was a good man, and he was blessed with every attribute necessary to be highly successful in life. He had tremendous skills, and he had everything to go with it. Personality, the looks, he had everything. And my parents were social drinkers. Back in that time, people drank. They would have family over to the house. They all smoked and all this kind of stuff. That was commonplace back then. But after moving into the house, and after these supernatural events starting to manifest and take place and take root, my father, who was he was a man's man, he was a very rugged individual, was a fighter, wasn't afraid of anyone or anything. He suddenly found himself in a situation that he couldn't control. Now, my parents believed in God, but we didn't have any faith-based upbringing or never went to church or anything like that. And so, here he is, this man that's used to being in control of every situation. Suddenly, he's in a situation that he cannot control. And I'm not making excuses for him. I'm just I always try to think why people do the things that they do. And my best guess on that would be that he was so confounded in his mind that he started to escape reality through alcoholism. So he went from a social drinker to, a raging alcoholic who began to physically abuse my mother on a regular basis between the years of 1973 and 1975. I can recall being 8 years old, having to run out of the house and get the police called on my father because he was killing my mother. I mean, these are horrific things. So I also firmly believe that while he was under the influence of alcohol, those demonic forces were able to enter him and fuel his rage towards my mother. It's a miracle that he didn't kill her. It really is. So I saw a tremendous amount of bloodletting in that house. And so you couple that with the spiritual aspect and the attacks that were taking place. It's a miracle that I'm not dead or in an insane asylum or in prison. It's an absolute miracle from God, and I thank him and praise him for it. My life could have turned out to be so different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When did you decide to become a minister?
Well, God chose me for it, to be honest with you, and I suffered for such a long time. So I'm trying to be as brief as I can because I know we don't have that much time. But I can tell you this, after years and years and years of suffering, my brother loved my dad unconditionally. So he left us in 1975. He went to Florida, went to work for his brother, who was a contractor, my Uncle Clifford Bean, who was a devout Christian. And so it was in 1979, and I want to tell you, my dad left us in such a horrible way that we ended up losing the house. The house was auctioned off in the front yard. My mother was very ill the entire time that we lived there. She had developed high blood pressure, which led to a series of strokes, which ultimately led to kidney failure. So she was very, not only suffering these beatings, and then after my dad left, she came under regular physical attack from the demonic entities to the point to where she couldn't sleep in her bed anymore. She had to sleep in with my brother and I. And so she was completely destroyed, mentally, physically, and spiritually from this. She couldn't work because she was so ill. We had to go on welfare. My mother was just devastated by that, because she was used to my dad providing for us and having things, and we certainly weren't well off, but we were comfortable and able to, my dad made a good living, so we were able to get by. But once he was gone, he wasn't sending any money, and it was hellish in that way as well. And so my mother comes under these regular physical attacks from the demonic entities. I was still being regularly attacked as well. My sister had run away from home in 1973. She married a young man in the neighborhood, and she was the first one to experience and suffer a physical attack in the house, and it took place in late 1970 when she was asleep in her bed. She felt a presence come in the room. She was awakened by it. She was scared. She was getting out of bed to get my parents, and something grabbed her leg, and she let out a scream, and that woke my parents, and they came running into the room. And they didn't see anything there, but they found her curled up in a ball, and they did see red marks on her leg where she said something had grabbed her. So that was the first physical encounter. And then in 1971, for me at age 5, that's where the attacks began, these regular physical attacks. And much like my sister, I'm in my bed asleep. Now, my brother and I shared, so if you made a right from the living room and went down this long hallway, which had a hard tile floor, often we'd hear footsteps coming down the hallway reverberating off of the paneling on the walls. My brother and I shared the first room on the right. My bed was closest to the door to the hallway. His was closest to the window. My parents' room was the next room down on the right, and then my sister's room was the room across the hallway, the last room on the left. And I believe that was the main portal in the house, because that room was always cold, even on the warmest of summer days. And that room is also the room where the door would open and slam for many repetitions. So my sister, after that, encounter, never felt comfortable in the house again. She always felt like she was being followed and watched. And that led to her departure out of there in 1973. But like I was saying, much like her encounter and attack, I was in bed asleep. I assumed that it was late at night. Something woke me from my sleep. I couldn't see anyone or anything there. However, I felt a presence. I got unnerved. I was getting out of bed, and I was getting out on the left side of my bed to go and get my parents, and a tremendous force grabbed me by my shoulders, threw me back on the bed, pinned me to the bed. I've given over 2,500 media interviews in my career, and every time, I talk about this, I can't accurately describe it in words. The feeling that I had at that time, I felt like I was dying, like I was going to die. I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my body. I wanted to scream for my parents. My mouth would not work. I felt paralyzed, couldn't move. The only thing that seemed to work were my eyes. And a lot of horrible things were happening, and it seemed like it was an eternity that this was going on. It was probably seconds or minutes at most. And as this is all taking place, a beautiful angelic lady appeared at the foot of my bed. And as this divine being manifested, all the horrible things that were happening to me suddenly stopped. This angel smiled at me, gazed at me. I felt so much love and comfort and peace and protection from that being. And then she turned to her left and floated up through the ceiling. And after that, I jumped out of that bed and raced in to my parents' room. They were asleep. I woke them up. My father was not happy about that. But the most astounding part of that experience was that the divine being looked exactly like my mother.
That's weird.
Yeah, and perhaps, now again, I don't pretend to know all the answers, but perhaps at that time, maybe I was so traumatized that God had an angel manifest in the form and the likeness of my mother to calm me down. That's the only reasoning. But at the same time, I'll tell you this. On many occasions, when my mother was being physically attacked from those dark forces, that same divine manifestation came and helped her and looked exactly like her. So can you imagine, Mia, A, having the experience, and then B, having this divine manifestation come and it looks exactly like you? It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what I would do.
It's absolutely, it's something that's unthinkable, really. It truly is. And the turning point of my life came, and I'm getting to your question now. I just took the long way around. The turning point for me came in 1979. My brother loved my dad unconditionally. I very much hated my father for a long time, I'm sorry to say, and I was able to forgive him before his untimely death, and I thank God for that. But I hated him. I had a burning hatred towards him for what he did to my mother, and how it all turned out. And again, he was a good man who just made terrible choices, and I forgive him for all of it, and I love him. But my brother wanted to go visit him in Florida. I did not. But I ended up going with my brother, and little did I know that it would turn out to be something that would be a turning point in me for my life in moving forward as a spiritual warrior. While on that visit, I got into a very long talk with my Uncle Clifford, who started to, for the first time in my life, give me hope and help me to develop faith. And he told me that we could take power and authority over these things by invoking the power of God. And I use God's mighty and holy name, which his name is Yahweh. So in my deliverances and exorcisms, I say, Yahweh, rebuke thee, depart, by the mighty power of Yahweh and his mighty and holy name, Yahshua Jesus the Christ's name. So people say to me, are you Jewish? Well, yeah, I guess, sort of. I mean, I'm, our God, I just follow along with what we're told. So in the Bible, it says, those who call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. That should say Yahweh. So wherever you see Lord in caps in the Bible, that should say Yahweh. His name was covered up, and the title of Lord was placed in there. Most people don't understand that. But anyway, I had this great dialogue and discussion with my uncle, and he, for the first time in my life, I felt empowered. I felt like I had hope. I really felt good. And so little did I know that A, I believe that God arranged the whole thing in order for me to have that discussion with him. Then B, when we got home, on the very day that we returned, I would engage in my first battle against those demonic forces. Now, I was a scared kid that was victimized over and over and over and over again throughout my childhood. The only outlet that I had was sports. I was the first guy on the field and the last guy to leave because I didn't want to go home. And I lived that way for so long. It was so bad, Mia, that if my mom had to use the bathroom and if it were just the two of us in the house, I'd sit outside the door until she came out. It was that bad. And so all those years of being in the fear-based, trauma-based way of thinking and living, and then having that discussion with my uncle, which I felt a sense of empowerment, we get back on that very day. My mother is attacked, picked up by an unseen force, and thrown through the air in her bedroom. She landed to her makeup table. She was cut open. My mother had cuts, bruises, and scratches and other marks on her long after my dad had left. And something inside of me snapped on that day. Now, it's also worth noting that we had a Catholic priest involved for the last 16 months that we lived there, and he did everything that he could. My family and I are not Catholic. I'm non-denomination. But my step-grandfather was Catholic, and he went to his church, and they sent a priest out. And the priest was bringing mason jars full of holy water to the house. I mean, he was a frequent visitor to the house. And so on that day, after my mother had just been attacked, I was enraged. And I went from this kid that was so traumatized for so long into a person that had had enough. You know, when you push somebody in the corner and you bully them and push them, a lot of times they're going to come out fighting because they've had enough and something snaps. And that's what happened to me on that day. And I grabbed the Bible and a jar of that holy water, and I began calling them out. And this is where I made my mistake, because my uncle said, bind and rebuke them and cast them out. Well, my mistake was calling them out and demanding them to show themselves. And boy, was that ever a mistake, because it was like a scene from a horror film. The house started vibrating. Things were falling off the walls. Doors were slamming. I had 5 adults. I was 13 years old. There were 5 adults with me. They were all terrified. My mother had just been attacked, and now here I am engaging in warfare against these entities. And so they are standing behind me as I'm going up the hallway, demanding and commanding these things to show themselves. We get up the hall. They go behind me into the dining room, and I advance into the living room. And I would say, within 10 feet probably, 4 entities manifested. And it was like a scene from that show Star Trek, to where they manifested in these greenish, yellowish beams of light. The first entity had the look of a human, sort of, kind of. Black hair, black beard, chalky white skin, black eyes, black suit. That was one of the entities that was regularly attacking my mother. Second entity, short curly red hair, long scar down the side of its face, black eyes, chalky white skin, another attacker. The third entity, long dark hair, long black gown, sharp facial features, had the look of a witch. And then the fourth entity was what I call this dark force entity that was a black hooded figure with glowing red eyes. We clearly saw them for several seconds, and they didn't just suddenly vanish. They just sort of dissipated. And as they dissipated, all the horrible things that were taking place in the house, the chaotic stuff, suddenly stopped. And there was peace. And we ended up, at that point in time, my mother had a new man in her life named Richard. And Richard was very much like my dad, tough guy, former boxer, not afraid of anything or anyone. Yet was physically attacked many times in the house. He was terrified to be in there, and it was only his love for my mother that kept him coming back. Well, we ended up going to Richard's house for the weekend, and then we came back. And it wasn't long after that that we finally were forced to move out of there, because if we hadn't left when we did, I firmly believe that one of us would have been dead, because the last day that we were there was in December of 1980. We woke up to the smell of, it was a very pungent odor of burning wires. All the electrical appliances in the house burned up at the same time. My mother found my brother's pet guinea pig dead in the cage. And I think she had an epiphany there. And to be honest with you, Mia, we were all under demonic control for such a long time in that house, and I do believe that there was instances of demonic oppression and even possessions at times. And so there was a stronghold over the family and my mother as well, to the point to where we were resigned to accepting this as our life. Richard had begged her for a long time just, to move in with him. We could all move in with him, and she didn't want that. But on that day, it broke whatever spell that they had on her to keep her there. And I think she finally realized that, if we didn't get out of there, somebody was going to end up dead. And so we ended up, she contacted Richard. Richard was over there probably within an hour or so with a truck. We left a lot of the furniture and decor. We just took mostly personal items, clothes and stuff like that. And we got out of there, went to Richard's. Now, my brother and I didn't have any supernatural experiences while being at Richard's. However, and I didn't know this for a long time. Richard has since passed, but before he passed, I went to visit him, and he told me that my mother and he were still having experiences in his house, and my mother was still suffering those attacks up until the very time of her untimely death. And so, and I understand that. Why now? I absolutely understand why now. I didn't then, but I do now. So 2 deaths took place not long after moving out of the house. My mother's mother, my beloved grandmother, Dora Harvey, died from a sudden series of heart attacks at age 64. And then 2 months and 2 days later, my beloved mother, Patricia Bean, died from a cerebral hemorrhage at age 44. And these were the 2 closest people to me in my life, and they were suddenly gone. And I can't, again, describe in words how I felt. I didn't want to live anymore. I was seeking death. I lived my life on the edge for many, many years. I've been in many life-threatening situations. I've lived the life of 10 men, and I have been in just numerous situations to where I really should have been dead. And God saved me and protected me every time. I thank Him and praise Him for it. But Mia, I have 100% belief that those demonic forces had a hand in both of the deaths of my mother and grandmother and other deaths as well. My father was shot to death at age 48. And so you're right. Either my parents lived to see the age of 50, and there have been numerous untimely deaths under mysterious circumstances. And you alluded to one with my grandfather Harvey, whom I never met, but his tragedy took place in 1957. So it just went on and on and on. And there have been so many of these types of things that have happened over the years. Now, what I have done since I have become this spiritual warrior, and again, I'm taking a long way around on your question that you asked probably 10 minutes ago. The start of it was in 1979, the turning point, and I do believe that God allowed all that to happen again to see if I could, in fact, be who He wanted and needed me to be as a spiritual warrior. So then, life wasn't hunky-dory after that. These deaths take place of my grandmother and mother. I'm devastated. I had to quit school in the 8th grade. I lied about my age. I went to work for a construction company. Here I was, a skinny kid that was in the fear-based, trauma-based way, and now I'm put into a world with these hardcore men, and that made me a hardcore man, and so I grew up on the streets. I hung out with some of the worst people. Most of those people are dead or in prison. I drank, I did drugs, I was violent, you name it. And I could have very well ended up like them, either dead or in prison. And God saved me. And so I lived that way for a long time. I was in so much pain that I had to keep people away from me. I didn't want to love anybody. I didn't want anybody to get close to me. I was cordial outwardly to people, so I would be polite, outwardly. but nobody got close to me. I didn't want nobody knowing anything about me. I didn't want anybody near me. I just couldn't bear the thought of that happening again and having that type of pain. So I just kept people at a distance. Now, I lived that way for a long time until I had an epiphany one day. And the epiphany that I had was, hey, maybe I can do better and be better, and maybe I can break out of this and have a quality of life. So I said to God, I said, if you'll help me to better my life and to get me out of this, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to do drugs. I don't want this life. I don't want to be on these streets anymore. And he heard me. I think he knew that I was sincere. And changes started to take place. So I was sincere about making God first in my life. And it wasn't an overnight instantaneous thing, but it was with the drugs and alcohol. It was instantaneous. I never went to one AA, NA. It just stopped. And I didn't have any more desire for it. So that was miraculous and instantaneous. However, the behavioral patterns, that was a process because, when we develop, and we all develop behavioral patterns in some way, but when you're coming from fear-based, trauma-based, and then you get into this type of mentality to where you're living your life on the edge like an outlaw, and that's how I relished in being an outlaw. Once I got past being the scared little kid and then being a hardcore man from working with these hardcore guys, then I had that outlaw mentality and doing things wrong. That was my way of doing things right, and I relished in it. That's difficult to break. Not impossible, but very, very difficult. And that requires a sincere effort from the person to say, hey, I don't want this anymore. So for me, it was 2 steps forward and 3 steps backward until I got there. And then once I got there, I looked at it and I felt so far removed from it. It was like it happened to somebody else. So that's what God does. He saved me. He transformed my life, and then he put this calling on me. And I thought, Yahweh must have a sense of humor, because why would me of all people, you're going to call me to do something, to be a help to others? Are you kidding me? I had such a low opinion of myself that there's no way. I thought, it's unfathomable to think that someone like me could be of any help to anyone. And I think a lot of that obviously was from the fear-based, trauma-based, but also from a lack of education. So I felt intellectually inadequate, that there's no way I'm stupid. There's no way someone stupid person like me could do anything to help anybody. That's how I felt at the time. But what I didn't realize was that the more real and authentic that I was with God, in my commitment to him and in serving him, the more he was blessing me. So the closer that I drew to him, he drew even closer to me, and blessings started to come into my life. And then I had this desire to do better and to be better. And with that came many studies. I spent 4 years in biblical studies and studied everything that you could think of, history, you name it. And so I'm happy to tell you now that God has blessed me with wisdom and knowledge far beyond anything that I could have ever imagined for my life. And I thank him and praise him for it. But it took a lot of effort on my part as well to do the studies and to put in the time and the work. And so with that, I felt more confident. And then I started to consider, because this calling was so strong. I mean, I'd wake up feeling it. It would come on me during the day. I would go to bed feeling it. Same thing. But I resisted it for a long time. And then I considered after that, I thought, well, you know what? Okay, maybe he really is calling me into service to help people. And so then I became an ordained minister, non-denomination. And so my story got out there. I started giving interviews in 1996. So my story started getting out then, but then a haunting featured my family story, and that aired on September 7th, 2006, and that's what put me on the map internationally. And so with that, a lot of people were contacting me for help, And I thought, I can't, there's nothing I can do at that time, there's nothing I can do. But then when I was real and sincere in my commitment to God and became an ordained minister, then I started to help people. And I'll never forget the first time. It was a family in Maryland that had a severe demonic problem. They too were being attacked. They had a lot of terrible things going on. And I could feel the presence of evil as soon as I set foot on the property. But at the same time, I had this overwhelming feeling that this is what I'm supposed to be doing in life. This is my purpose in life. God has chosen me. I didn't choose this. I was chosen to do this. And so even though I was in a disturbing situation with a family that was under siege, I had a confidence and blessed assurance that I knew God chose me to do this. I knew that he was with me and for me. I knew that he was going to work through me to help these people. So it was the greatest feeling to know what my purpose in life was. And then it was an even greater feeling when God worked through me to have delivered that family and their home from evil. And I never looked back from there. And it's probably been in the low thousands of people that I've helped worldwide, all over America and the world. I've helped people in 55 other countries as well. And it's really miraculous, Mia, when you think about it, how this all started out and how God had this plan for me. So in looking back on it, as I said to you earlier, I believe that I could not be here where I'm at right now and helping others had I not been there to suffer. But also I believe that the devil was trying to kill me before I could get to where God wanted and needed me to be in this position as a spiritual warrior to help others.
That's scary. I have so many questions.
And I'll shut up and let you talk now.
Well, what exactly does a spiritual deliverance minister do, and how does that differ from traditional religious practice? Because for what I noticed, for you, it's very quick to remove or exorcise people.
Yeah.
Right? And
yes. And that's by the power of God. It's not me.
That's really weird. But Catholics, I've heard other ministers talk like, what's his name? I don't remember. Martin?
Oh,
Father
yeah,
Martin.
Malachi. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So he says that, it can take years. But why the difference?
Okay, here's the difference. And I'm not going to criticize Catholics or anybody else, but I'm going to speak the truth, what I believe to be true anyway. This is how God works through me. So maybe he works through others differently. My approach is to be in complete control. And the only way that I can be in complete control of the situation is to have zero fear. So in order to have zero fear, I have to have 100% faith in knowing that God has sent me to that person, in knowing that he's going to work through me to deliver them no matter what, and in knowing it's going to happen swiftly. Now, at the same time, I don't just go in there and by the power of God working through me, evict these demonic forces, and that's the end of it. After it's over with, I have to go through the entire house and make sure that nothing evil is hiding or lurking there. And I have encountered face-to-face demons that were hiding and lurking in there. And then I have to sit down with the person and put a game plan together for their life. And part of that game plan is to urge them not to open doorways that would invite this kind of stuff in. And so I do stay in contact as much as I can. I'm tremendously busy, but I try to stay in contact with as many of them as I possibly can. And they know that they're having a problem, they can reach back out to me, which does happen sometimes. And so it's all about keeping the frequency and vibration high, keeping the doorways closed, and keeping faith. That's the most important thing. So if these people, and also what I do, Mia, in these deliverances, many times, most times, I will baptize the person after everything is over with. So it's a renewal of covenant with God, followed by a baptism. Therefore, they are presented to God as blessed, sealed, sanctified, purified, cleansed, and made holy before them. And that really is the exclamation point on the whole thing. And I've seen people that were just in such a horrible way and being attacked, and people that were completely possessed and did things, unspeakable things. I've seen people like that delivered, and they move forward to have a quality of life, and they're so far removed from it. And then in other cases, God has worked through me to deliver the person, and then unfortunately, sometimes, in some of the cases, they did open those doorways again. And unfortunately, the scriptures tell us when the temple is cleansed and the original spirit is driven out, if a doorway opens, that 7 more wicked than the original will come back. And I've seen it. It does happen. And I've been to some people 3, 4, 5, 6 times until they finally understood that they had to keep those doorways closed. And then they were able to move forward after that. But in a large majority of the cases, not all, but in a good amount of them, some sort of child molestation has taken place, rape, some type of violent crime, something that caused a high level of trauma. Because obviously the demons are on the perpetrator, but when that high level of trauma is established, blood and secretions will come out of the victim, and then they're drawn to the victim like it's like candy to them. It's a drug. And they will stay on that person until they're evicted. So whether it's me or some other agent of God, by the power of God working through them, that's necessary and it's required. So I would say, again, that's the biggest difference between what I call spiritual deliverance versus exorcism. Exorcism is a rite. It is, in my opinion, I could be wrong and I'm not criticizing anybody, but my approach is that the best defense is a strong offense. So these demonic forces are bullies, just like the devil. He's a bully. And they look for weakness in people. And they want people that are broken and traumatized. They want to cause the traumas. So therefore, when that happens, they come in, and it's all about kill, rob, and destroy, and just wear that person down to where they can't fight anymore. So, in essence, and again, it's not me because I'm just a vessel. I would never dare claim to be anything special other than a person that God chose to work through to help people. But my approach is an aggressive approach. I become the bully because of the power of God working through me, not because of my power. It's the power of God working through me. So I have to become that bully. I have to be the one that's taking control and charge and evicting them. Now, in other practices, perhaps that's not the case. And again, no offense to anybody. I'm not criticizing anybody. But there seems to more, in my opinion, to be more of a defensive approach in some of that. And that's why, in my opinion, it would take much longer for things to be resolved.
Do you need to have the demon's name in order to evoke them out?
Nope.
That's another
Absolutely
difference.
Not. Yeah. And I can tell you that, again, from firsthand experience. Think of it like this. And I've said this so many times. No agent of God or no one, no person, should ever have dialogue with a demon or demons. Because they're liars. They're like their father, the devil, the father of lies. So how in the world can you have any kind of dialogue and believe that that's true? They are liars. So the only dialogue that I have with demons is to tell them to be silent if they try to talk, which I've heard that many times, voices manifesting out of possessed individuals. And so I tell them to be silent. Yahweh rebuke thee, depart. So I'm taking command over them at all times. I had a case one time with this young man. I probably said it 100 times. He was fully possessed. And I was in full battle against these demonic forces, and I must have said it 100 times, Yahweh rebuke thee, depart. Yahweh rebuke thee, depart in Jesus' name. Depart at once. I guarantee I said at least 100 times, and it was wearing them down. So it is this back and forth, and it is a battle of wills. And the only way that an agent for God can sustain that is by the power of God working through that agent of God. I have been in situations where people they wanted to shoot me, stab me, try and slash me, spit on me, bite me, vomit on me. You just wouldn't believe it. Superhuman strength in some of these individuals, and it was only by the power of God working through me that helped me to be able to keep control of the situation, and also to keep the person safe and to keep me safe as well.
Do you do this alone?
Yes, and it is dangerous. I wouldn't recommend it, but this is how I work. And I know that God's always with me and for me, but I'm telling you, Mia, I've been in some situations as the spiritual warrior to where my life was in jeopardy. And only by the power of God and his blessing and his love for me and his protection did I come out of that unscathed and still in control of the situation. Even if you were there with me, you would rub your eyes and go, did this just happen? Did I just see this? But yes, I've been in some very dangerous situations.
Can you tell us a story? You can change the names and...
Well, there's a bunch of them that
I know,
come
I
to
read
mind.
some.
Go ahead.
I heard you recently speak about somebody, I guess, was biting their own flesh off.
Correct. Yeah. Out of their arms and legs. Yeah.
Ugh.
And then slithering around the floor like a snake.
Oh, disgusting.
Yeah,
Really?
serpent-like. I have seen people's tongues come out like that, serpent-like, very much like how a snake, you just visualize that. I've seen people's eyes change from all white to all black to red, and all red. And in one case, this lady's eyes changed to like greenish, yellowish color with reptilian slits. I have seen it all. I have seen limbs twist in ways and contort in ways that a human body can't without snap, crackle, and pop of bones and tearing ligaments. I've seen it. I've seen people levitate. I have heard the voices come out of, deep masculine voices come out of females. One exorcism, there were at least 20 and maybe upwards to 30 different entities that I had to cast out of this woman. It was just one right after the other. That would be at the top of the list of the severity of demonic possession, what took place there in that case in 2017. I've also seen a loved one that was possessed for 22 days, and that too is at the top of the list on the severity scale of demonic possession that I've seen or been involved in. The average ordinary person, there's no way that they would want to be around something like that. As a matter of fact, in the case of the female that was possessed that way, the husband, her husband, he was a military man, and he was absolutely terrified by what he was seeing and experiencing there. And she was actually physically attacking him while under demonic possession. And that man, again, a military man, was terrified. And so this isn't for the faint of heart. This isn't, I don't wish it on anybody, and I wouldn't want any average ordinary person to be there to experience or see it, because it could be a lasting traumatic effect on the person to just be a part of something like that.
Oh, gosh. What is your most difficult case? That one lady with the 30?
That would be at the top of the list. And then the other case where you mentioned about the person biting the chunks of flesh out.
What happened with that one?
Well, that person And I'm happy to tell you they're doing very well.
Oh, good.
Both those people, praise God. But it was so severe when that deliverance was taking place. I had the person, and I do this a lot, I will have them fill a tub up, and I'll bless the water and pour in a mixture of holy water, holy oil, holy salt, sometimes frankincense. And then I declare the water to be blessed, sealed, sanctified, purified, cleansed, and made holy before God. Then I'll instruct them to step in, and then I'll start to perform the spiritual deliverance over them. And during that one, as the demon was leaving, the individual's face, the cheek bones went up like this into points, and then the chin went down like, so it was like a inverted triangle. It jotted up like that, and the chin went down like that, and then the entity came out through the top of the person's head. They've got to come out somehow. They usually come out through the mouth, but they're going to come out. So I've seen them come out of just about every type of place you could think of in a human being, but usually it's through the mouth, but sometimes it is through the top of the head.
Wow. So that person bit themselves all over. Did they need to go to the hospital and get stitches?
Oh, absolutely. And so that person was also taken to the top psychiatric doctors in that area, in that city. And all they did was pump it full of meds and psych holes and things of that nature. So that individual is leading a miraculous life now of recovery, being saved, being delivered from that, and doing very well in life. And I'm thankful to God for it. I'm thankful that he worked through me to help that person. But I could go on and on and on. I remember one case, the husband was assisting me, this lady. It wasn't her, it was this demonic voice coming out of her, screaming to the top of her lungs. And I'm thinking, dear God, the neighbors are going to call the police any second. They're going to think somebody's being killed in here or something. And then projectile vomiting. Just thinking about that and a plethora of other cases that were similar in nature. These things are commonplace, but yet so disturbing for the average, everyday, ordinary person that, you know, they would flee the scene very quickly if they were seeing some of these things. Another time, a person had broken a window and took a shard of glass about that long, was trying to slash me with it. Again, I've had people saying, I want to shoot you right now. You better take my gun because I'm going to shoot you. People trying to stab me, physically attack me, bite me, spit on me. One case, this was the Caleb Weaver story that aired on Discovery Channel, and it was part of the A Haunting series and Lifetime Movie Network. And in Caleb's case, before the exorcism deliverance was to take place, God showed me a vision that he was going to try and stab me. And I took it very seriously. And so I had, on that occasion, I had his friend, a young man that God had worked through me to deliver from evil as well, John Drenner, and another friend with me. And we actually put Caleb, because Caleb was a police officer. He was a special police officer, and John was as well. They were partners. They were best friends. And we actually put Caleb in the chair and put him in cuffs. And it was during this deliverance that I had placed the holy mixture on his forehead, made the sign of the cross on his forehead, and it dripped down, and he spit it back on me. And then had this maniacal laugh. His face was contorting, changing. He had this maniacal laugh, but what I did, he had this maniacal, and he put his head down like this, and what I did is I grabbed him by his hair and pulled his head back up, and his eyes met mine. And when that happened, Mia, His head went all the way back like this, facing the ceiling, and all this black substance, like powdery, chalky, kind of black dust was coming out of him. I will never, ever forget it. And so I completed the exorcism deliverance over him, and then I baptized him, and he was completely changed. And another miraculous thing that happened was after I had left, and I stayed there for a while after it was all over with. Again, I had to make sure that everything was clear in the home. When I left, I received a call from John about 30 minutes later saying, "You won't believe what happened after you left." And a lot of, not all, but a lot of times I do pray that God will give the person confirmation that he is with them and for them, that it's over with. They could trade the fear in for faith. And sometimes I ask that God will not only send the angels, but maybe show them to the person to give them confirmation. And sure enough, on this night, I get a call 30 minutes later from John saying that, obviously Caleb was exhausted, and that's what happens when these people are delivered. They're absolutely exhausted. I'm exhausted too. And so Caleb and John and Caleb's fiance at the time were going into the living room when suddenly this magnificent, beautiful angel manifested right in front of them. And they saw it clearly. And that really put the exclamation point on the whole thing. And John called me. He said, "You won't believe it, you?" I said, "Well, yeah, I do believe it." Because, in my life now, and I still have supernatural experiences, but they are supernatural, divine, by and large, because if anything would dare to come near to me in any type of demonic evil way, I'd leap out of this chair and I would attack them by the power of God working through me to bind and rebuke and cast them out and evict them. So my supernatural experiences now are divine. I have seen angels on many occasions. I've had vivid dreams about angels hugging me. I have had other clients that I have asked God to manifest angels for and to, and he has. And so it is just a wonderful thing in knowing that God is actually working through me to save people, to deliver them from this evil, and then to give them confirmation on top of it. It's just a win-win thing. And that's what I preach to people all the time, that when we trade the fear in for the faith, and when we're real and authentic in our faith, then these blessings are going to come. And look, I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. I don't claim to be, but I can tell you this, I'm real and authentic, and I try to do the best that I can do, and I try to be the best that I can be each and every day of my life. And that's what God wants from us. And if we can make the effort to be in that level of commitment, if we're in that level of commitment, we're committed to excellence. And if we're committed to excellence, then we should refuse to lose. So I declare victory in each and every day of my life, and I will do so for the rest of my life. My life is not perfect, but my life is very good and very blessed. And I once had a life that was so horrible that I was seeking death. And now I have a life that is so blessed that I would not trade my life for anybody's life on this planet. And that is a miracle from God.
Absolutely. Do you believe objects can be possessed or cursed?
Yes. God has worked through me to deliver people, places, and things from evil. Absolutely. And the scriptures tell us, do not bring a cursed thing into your home lest you be cursed like it. So absolutely, these entities are always looking for, they desire a human body, but if they can't get the human body, sometimes they will settle for a doll or some type of object or artifact. I've seen it many times throughout my lifetime and career. And there are also places, and whether that is homes or buildings or businesses, you name it. I've been, even churches. You would be surprised, Mia.
I know.
How many
I've
times
been in churches and I felt very uncomfortable.
You'd be surprised at the churches that have brought me in from around the country to go and perform deliverances over the pastors, their families, the congregation, the churches that had evil manifestation in the churches. You better believe it.
I believe it.
So
you actually had to help other. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You had to help other preachers or
pastors.
Priests?
Yes, absolutely. And some were considering suicide. That's how severe it was.
They were actually possessed too?
Wouldn't say possessed. I would say under oppression, and the spirit of suicide was on some, and voodoo curses were involved in some of the cases as well.
What's oppression? What does that mean?
Okay, so the opening stages of a demonic infiltration, I would say, starts with a stronghold, and that starts with something that's called obsession, and then in that people start to have, they might hear voices, they might see manifestations, they might see objects move. It's all designed, these are little parlor tricks, and it's all designed to put that person in the state of fear, to lower the frequency and vibration. So then the next step is oppression, and oppression could take place by the wearing down of that individual through fear. So it's through fear-based, trauma-based, and then the person could start to develop a deep depression. They could start to withdraw from people, not wanting to be around people, being isolated, and the devil loves that because it's divide and conquer tactics. So, together we're strong, but when divided, it's easy to conquer. And so that's right out of his playbook. And so the person also under oppression will start to, they could either feel demonic presence, they could be attacked, they could have demonic dreams, they could start to feel a really burning hatred or aggression. They could start to feel like God doesn't love them or want them, and they don't love or want God. They don't want anything to do with Yahweh or Jesus. And boy, oh boy, when that's taking place, that is the step before possession. So it is all processed, these 3 stages, and it's all designed to wear the person down to the point to where they give up the will to live or fight. And that's how a full demonic possession could take place.
Wow. Can you see if people are possessed? Can you tell by just looking at them, or?
I don't claim to be anything, but I can tell you this, that God has given me gifts. And as part of those gifts, yes, I can look at people. For instance, I can look at you, and I look at your eyes, and I know that you're very gifted. You're very gifted. You're an intuitive individual who has these abilities and capabilities. Some people would call it psychic abilities. I call it gifts from God, prophetic gifts. You have that. I could see that. But there are people that I have encountered. It could be in an airport, it could be in a grocery store, it could be anywhere, that I look and say, whoa, this person has something on them. And I have been in places like airports, on airplanes, grocery stores, hospitals, wherever it may be, and people are drawn to me like a magnet. And all of a sudden they're coming up to me and telling me, and I already know because I could see it and I could feel it, but they're telling me everything, all their problems, and they're having these problems
Me
and
too.
under attack. Yeah, I believe
I get the same.
I could see right away and feel right away. I know your gifts, and God has blessed you, and He
People
continues
come
to
up
bless
to
you.
me
Yeah.
and tell me their life story. I just met them.
Yep. It happens all the time, and I just shake my head. Absolutely, because no matter where I go, I try to mind my business. I stay quiet, but yet these people, they're just drawn. They just come, and I praise God for that. So I'm thankful. But I could be anywhere, restaurant, hotel, you name it, and like you're saying, same thing. They just all of a sudden are drawn, and they just start to tell you everything, and some of these people were in really great need and dire straits.
Yeah, I will see people walking on the street and I can tell that they have something. They're talking to themselves, they're something, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
keep the demons away. Don't come next to me. I don't want to go near them.
And I can't just walk up to somebody. I would never do this because we have free will. So I would never walk up to somebody and say, hey, you know what? You got demons on you. Why don't you let me help you? I would never do that. But yet these people, and I guess it's by the power of God that they feel compelled to come to me.
Yeah.
And
I can't help them, but you can.
It's just amazing. I praise God for it. But I have actually performed a semblance of a spiritual deliverance over a person in the air on an airplane. Just some of the things I look back on, I just say, wow, I can't believe some of the situations that I've been in and some of those types of things. One time I was renting a car, I think it was in Detroit. And for whatever reasons, Detroit is one of the most visited places for me to where people are having New York and Detroit, New Jersey, Chicago, Los Angeles, Florida. These are the hot spots, and so on this occasion I'm in Detroit and I'm renting a car and I gave the guy my license and he kept looking at me. He says, I know you. I don't know. I saw you on TV. I know who you are. And so that's how that came about. Now, all of a sudden, he's asking me to help his coworker that he believes is under spiritual attack and all this. And I end up helping the coworker. Here I am. I'm trying to rent a car just to go to my hotel. And yet that's what happened. And it has happened so many times in so many different places. I've been in restaurants where the waitress will come up and I don't even know how it initiates, from hi, how are you to, I guess in some instances they'll say, what brings you here, why you're here or whatever. And then I say something and then that's it. Then they're telling me everything. And I'm praying for them. Right there, either in the restaurant or the hotel or whatever it is.
You're not wearing a collar of any sort or something, right, to say that you're a minister, or do you?
No, just like how I'm wearing this shirt here, where I would be in a suit or something like that. Nothing that nothing that has a light on saying this is who I am, this is what I do. And I've had people come up to me and say to me, I know that you are a minister or a man of God. I just know it. They knew it. And I said, well, how did you know that? And we just looked at you. We knew. We just knew. That's amazing. And I'll never forget maybe about 25 years ago, long before I was the spiritual warrior, this gifted lady said to me, she said, you are a holy man. And at that time, I was not a holy man. I said, no, I'm not. She said, oh, yes, you are. You are a holy man. And a time is going to come to where you're helping many people. I thought that woman was crazy. But God must have shown her something because she was adamant that I was a holy man and God was going to work through me to help people.
And you're a big guy, aren't you? You're pretty tall.
Yeah.
So
people at one time, I came up to the counter of a rent-a-car place, and I think it was in Florida, and the guy said to me, are you a hitman? That's what he said. I said, no, I'm not a hitman for demons, baby, but I used to be a power lifter. I boxed, I wrestled, martial arts. I'm older now. I'm 57. I don't lift heavy weights anymore, but I used to bench press 500 pounds. I mean, I was this very powerful individual, and I guess a very threatening individual as well from a physical standpoint. I never overtly wanted to intimidate or threaten anybody, but it was a presence, I guess, that I carried with me. And I guess it's some semblance. It was traded. The physical warrior was traded for the spiritual warrior now. So I still work out. I still keep myself in shape, but I'm not lifting 500 pounds anymore.
But you must have some kind of kindness in your face for people to come up to you, being as big as you are, that they feel comfortable with talking to you.
And that's the flip side of it. So it seemed like there was this switch to where some people would be intimidated or, and saying, no, I'll stay away from this guy. But then it somehow switched to where I guess God put this divine energy on me, or however you want to say it, to where people were drawn. And they just, it recently happened. My wife and I were in a restaurant. Well, my wife was shopping, grocery shopping. And I went into this restaurant just to get a menu. I'd never been in there before. And I go in, all of a sudden, I go from getting a menu to the owner now engaged in this dialogue with me. And then my wife, I go and get her out of the grocery store, and we go and have dinner at this place. And now almost all of a sudden, I'm praying for her, and it's just absolutely amazing how these things happen. And my intent was to go in there and get a menu. It's amazing, man. It really is.
God works in funny ways like that.
He sure does, and I'm just thankful. My intent and my MO every day of my life is to be a blessing to somebody. I truly love people. I try to treat everybody with kindness and decency and respect, and I take the sufferings of others very seriously and very personally.
And your wife is a very strong woman too, to allow you to go out and risk your life and your marriage,
she very easily could have left me many years ago because I have been so consumed with helping people. I'm up till 6:30 a.m., sometimes 7 a.m. every morning. Every morning. And so I'm helping people from everywhere, and that is every single day. So she could have very easily a long time ago said, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. Sorry. But she's a wonderful woman, and she has...
Strong.
Yes, very strong, and she shares in my faith, and I praise God. I couldn't have somebody that didn't share. It wouldn't work. There's no way it could work.
Nope.
So I'm very blessed.
With a strong woman.
Yes, and very, very thankful to Mia. Yes. So God has brought so many blessings into my life and continues to do so.
That's great.
And for the people that say that God doesn't work miracles, I beg to differ. Because the greatest miracle and the greatest gift that he ever gave to us was the gift of life. And he works a miracle for us every day when we open our eyes. It's the gift of life, and we should thank him and praise him for it every single day.
Absolutely. So where can people find you?
The easiest place to find me is www.billjbean.com, or you could punch my name into Google. You'll get the phone book. But that's the place you want to find me. You can contact me directly from that site. I promise you I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. If you are in spiritual need and you feel like you're under spiritual attack, don't hesitate. Contact me, and I'll do everything that I can by the power of God working through me to help you. Same thing if you want to order a copy of the book. There it is. My Life Transformation from Victim to Victor. If you want to order a copy of the book, same thing. Visit Bill J. Bean, or you can get copies on Amazon as well. But the book is very well received. I've had a lot of great reviews on it, and I'm thankful for that as well, because it was very difficult for me to write the first book. And to the point to where I thought, I can't do this. I can't, because it was such a challenge for me on an intellectual level. The diction, the punctuation, the spelling, how to put things in proper order to shape it into a presentable story. It was all very challenging for me. I'd never done it before. And it was to the point where I was ready to throw it all down and just say, I can't. I forget it. I can't do it. And I had to pray and ask God to help me. And it was very painful as well, because I had to place myself back and relive a lot of those traumatic experiences. So that was the most difficult book to write. Now this is my 11th book. And not that it isn't difficult when I come to, some portions of it, but it is so easy for me now because I know how to put it together and what to do and where this goes and that goes. So it is very easy for me in that sense. And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah. Is your childhood house, is that still standing?
To my knowledge, yes. And there were other families. There was a family by the name of Hardin. The house, I can't remember the guy's name, but he bought the house after we had left. And he bought it from the man that had bought the house in the public auction. When we lost the house, it was auctioned off in the front yard. Some other guy bought it from that guy. And that guy, I was told, lived there for 16 days. And then he put it back, took a tremendous loss, and got out of there. Then another family moved in by the name of Hardin. And they lived there, and they too had some really bad things happen. And I was contacted by one of the family members that saw me on a haunting and said, "Hey, we lived in that house too." He said, "I told my mom I knew it was that house." And he told me a bunch of stories that had taken place with he and his family, that experiences that they had in the house as well. So it's changed hands quite a bit over the years. And I don't know who's living there now, but I could tell you this: if they reached out to me for help, I would go down there, and by the power of God working through me, would evict those demonic forces. Interestingly enough, over the years, especially in the years between 2014 and 2016, I was called by several families in the area, in that neighborhood, that were having demonic problems in their homes, and God worked through me to rid them of that evil. So that entire area is affected by evil.
Incredible. Wow.
What a journey, Mia.
What a journey. I'd like you to come back, though, because I have so much more questions. Oh, my God.
You and I are scratching the surface. We've got a ton of stuff. I mean, we got to get into the UFO stuff, the Bigfoot stuff, the man in black stuff, all that.
Can we?
Yeah, we're going to get into all of it.
And that brings us to an end of another episode of the Sensible Hippie Podcast. And I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Reverend Bill Bean for joining us on the Sensible Hippie Podcast. Reverend Bean, your insights and experiences have truly opened our eyes to the complexities of the spiritual realm and the power of faith in confronting the unknown. It's been a privilege having you share your journey and knowledge with us, and I can't wait for the next episode with you. And to all my listeners, thank you for tuning in and being part of this fascinating exploration. Your support and curiosity are what make this podcast a thriving space for uncovering truths and delving into the unconventional. So remember, keep an open mind and a courageous heart as we continue to explore the world's mysteries together. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave your thoughts on today's episode on your favorite podcast platform. And stay tuned for more thought-provoking discussions here at the Sensible Hippie Podcast. Until the next time, stand firm with the armor of God, faith as your shield, the Bible as your sword, and the helmet of salvation to guard your thoughts on this ongoing journey of spiritual warfare. And until the next time, take care. Bye.